Hi there, we're sitting in Seattle, Washington in June of 2013, and if you're like most people, when you think of Washington, you think of apples. But you may be surprised to know that the second largest agricultural crop is cannabis, pegging in at $1.2 with a B billion a year. So what does the passage of I-502 by Washington voters last year really mean? Well, you may know that medical marijuana has been legal in Washington state for years. So what does the passage of I-502 mean? It means that adults over 21 will be able to possess up to an ounce of cannabis. Now, you can't grow it, but you'll be able to buy it in state-sanctioned stores in early 2014. So, Colorado, with the passage of Amendment 64, and Washington, with the passage of I-502, are the first two states to end prohibition, joining 19 states, the District of Columbia, who've already legalized medical marijuana. But there's a big distinction between what Colorado and Washington voters did and medical marijuana. The distinction is the use of marijuana by adults over 21 for recreational purposes. Now, let me stop and make a distinction right here and right now. We're talking about cannabis sativa, cannabis indica, that marijuana plant that we all know and love so well. But there's a difference between the recreant and the medicine. The difference is this. For the last 30 or 40 years, Americans have cultivated and grown pot for one reason, and that's to get high. The cannabinoid, or the chemical responsible for that, is our old friend THC, tetrahydrocannabinol. THC is one of over 85 cannabinoids, not to mention terpenes and other compounds, and all of them act in concert in what's called the entourage effect. Now again, I said that Americans have been breeding pot for one reason for 30 or 40 years, and that's to get stoned. Therefore, if you grew something that was high in THC, it was a success. If it was low in THC, it was a failure and thrown out. Well, the problem is, over the years, Americans bred for THC at the exclusion of other cannabinoids like CBD, cannabidiol. Why is this important? Let's go back to medical marijuana. There are a number of conditions that cannabis is useful for treating. PTSD, anxiety, chronic pain, Crohn's disorder, Crohn's disease, irritable bowel syndrome, a whole host of things. The difference is the marijuana grown for THC may or may not address those health concerns. So what you have now is a domestic gene pool bred for stoners high in THC. The patients looking to get well are looking for CBD. Now, by lab analysis using chromatography, cannabidiol is only found in significant quantities in every 1 out of 400 to every 1 out of 600 samples tested. There are some people who collect these mutants because when you clone them or propagate them vegetatively, you end up with a strain that can be distributed to patients that gets you well. So again, there are medical access points or dispensaries here who sell cannabis to medical marijuana patients. It may or may not have CBD. Patients may or may not get the relief that they seek. With I-502, everyone can buy everything. The problem is patients are still going to need to seek out strains with cannabidiol and other healing compounds. So let's go back. There's several strains of marijuana. The two most popular are cannabis sativa, cannabis indica. Sativa are those Dr. Seuss looking plants, tall with the long leaves that hang down, and indicas tend to be shorter, squatter with wide leaves. In the old days, you had an indica or a sativa. With modern breeding, you find hybrids that are a little indica, little sativa. The difference, rule of thumb, sativas, daytime use, up, bubbly, creative, you're perky. Indicas, nighttime use, heavy pain control, and that sort of body somatic sensation. So again, sativas are said to be daytime use, indicas nighttime use. Most of the CBD strains are indicas. So, strains. In the old days, before the end of Prohibition and the proliferation of access points, you bought pot. Somebody had it, you had some money, you bought whatever was available. Now, with retail outlets like access points, you can actually go in and buy them by brand, by strain. And since the cannabinoid content is determined by the genetics, if you know what you're looking for, you can buy CBD-rich medicine. And so I find that there are two kinds of access points. Those that sell the recreant pot, as I call it, for those looking to get stoned, those that sell medicine, cannabis, for those who want to get well. Stoners want THC to get high, patients want CBD to get well. What should a patient look for? The classic strains are things like Harlequin, Amrita, Sour Tsunami number 3, Lemon Kush, some purple Kushes, but in the end, it's the chemical analysis that's the real litmus test. So there are labs that do chromatography that show you the breakdown of cannabinoids and other compounds that are at work in this particular sample of cannabis. So again, I thank the voters in both Colorado and Washington for taking that bold step and beginning to end prohibition. We have 48 other states and Puerto Rico to go. So everyone asked me that next logical question. Yes, it's still against federal law to possess marijuana. Here's my take. Obama is not about to hold a press conference and say, okay, you guys won prohibition, don't worry about it, states' rights, go at it, have a nice day. Nor will Eric Holder issue a press announcement that the attorneys around the country will no longer prosecute people. So de jure, cannabis is still illegal under federal law. De facto, the Democrats don't want to lose the millennium votes, and the younger the voter, the more pro-legalization they are. Americans, the majority of Americans now support the legalization. 76% of American doctors support medical marijuana. The tide has turned. So there's no political currency to be earned by the Democrats alienating young voters by going after states, Colorado and Washington, that have legalized possession by adults over 21. The other thing is, the federal government deals with federal issues. So as long as you act within the law in your state, Colorado or Washington, there's every reason to believe that since you're not doing interstate commerce, and as long as you pay your taxes, if you color in the lines and don't wander off the res, my sense is the feds are going to leave you alone. And here we are in June 2013. If they wanted to end this, they should have done so soon after the second Tuesday in November. The longer they wait, the harder it's going to be. Lastly, we have a president in the White House who got on national television and in an interview said, and I closely paraphrase, we have bigger fish to fry. So again, 2013, Colorado and Washington led the way. There are more states coming on board, doing it through the legislature, legalizing medical marijuana, not even waiting for the voters. The tide has turned. I encourage everyone, stay calm, become educated, research what's going on. But since the 30s, we've been living under the specter of incarceration for nonviolent crime for an herb that has never killed anyone because there's no lethal overdose for cannabis. I'm not advocating irresponsible use, but it's high time that cannabis return to its rightful place as a healing herb. Thanks.